Second. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again for our third, or is it fourth, community hangout around Ushahidi version 3. My name is Angie. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Ushahidi. Today, I'm really excited to have our amazing design team join us to talk through what it took to build V3, some of the insights around that. We have Brandon, who's our Creative Director, who'll just wave at you guys and say hi. We also have Sophie Shepard, who is one of our senior designers on the team. And we also have Seth Hall, who's our front-end developer on the team. And of course, we have the lovely Jess Sholad, who's our product manager for V3. Just a quick recap. We've had 3 hangouts so far. The first one, just to introduce you guys to what Ushahidi version 3 is all about. We had one that was kind of like a bonus on how to install version 3 with JSON and recorded that over for you. And last week, we also walked you through how to use Ushahidi version 3 for environmental mapping. So this week, it's really good to just get insights on, the guys who actually made it look the way it looks right now and made it a little different. Yeah, so I think I'll hand over to Brandon to just introduce the concept of Ushahidi and design and everything V3.
Yeah, got it. So I've been at Ushahidi. I guess I started in 3 years ago, and at that time the platform, this sort of flagship Ushahidi product was. It's about getting data, showing it on a map, and then maybe a few other things. Maybe here's a timeline or a list, and that was really the thrust of it. Like dots on a map was like a slogan that was tossed around. And about 2011, 2012, the developers on the team start to get a little bit, tired of dealing with the code base and feeling like they want to rewrite it. But more importantly, we had so many deployments out there that had kind of stretched Ushahidi to its limits. They wanted to put different kinds of data in there. They wanted to, this idea of this old school idea of having a front end and then admins go to another place and they have a different interface for using it. That was starting to sort of show its age. So we had a pretty long list of problems to address. And I think one of the smartest things we did in about 2012, and I'm actually going to share my screen here so you guys know what I'm talking about. Is rather than just go, oh, what would be the coolest tech we could pull off, or come up with the coolest look and feel, or how sexy could we make it look? We actually started by interviewing all of our users and developing some just high level, these are really the personas, the type of people that care about whatever we do with a version 3. And so, these are people like folks who are gathering news, monitoring elections, and then even some folks who weren't really sort of what we internally thought of as traditional Ushahidi users, people who are not really crowdsourcing so much as managing a database of things or updates about a thing. In this, this case, what's the status of this building? And then, of course, citizens who are participating in the process, and journalists who are sort of reading it and figuring out what the story is in there. So that was, I think, a really big foundational thing that kind of helped us get going in 2012 with the new version. And so we had a clear idea, or at least could start to develop a clear idea of what would be different about it from version 2. And so out of that came, I think, the first question for designers and the design team that we even wrestled with up until about a year and a half ago, was, if you go to a deployment and you're on the home page, what do you see? We have this bias from version 2 that, well, of course you're going to see a map, but maybe not. A lot of these personas that we developed didn't really care about a map, So one of the first sort of ideas that we kind of let sink in, and that I think permeates everything we've done and that we'll talk about here today, is that kind of fundamentally version 3 needs to be agnostic to the data that's in it. So people may not really care about viewing it in a map. They may want to view it in a list. They may not care about viewing it even seeing the contents of a post. They may just want to see trends over time. So I think that meant that this thing, in the same way that maybe, and this analogy that I've drawn is sort of has helped me figure out where we should go with the layout of the platform. I think that meant that we needed to think of Ushahidi a little bit more like a music player, like an iTunes or a Spotify or whatever, for data, so that folks could, they could put together playlists, or they could put together, just the music they cared about, and work with it from there. And so that meant, I think that kind of cascaded into a lot of decisions that Sophie and Seth will talk about. Starting with, like, all right, so every designer, if you don't really think about the problem at hand, you might go like, well, I'm going to make it super simple, and it's going to be the Instagram of data or something. And while that is like obviously a good thing to go for, I think it has meant that for the platform, for the problems it's trying to solve, it really needed to, for example, when you come to the home page of a deployment, there's actually a lot you can do. It's not just adjust a map with like 2 buttons. There are a lot of controls, because people want to get in and they want to mash up data and whittle things down to exactly what's important to them. And so that's what we've done. Out of those decisions, I'll share my screen again. One of the first sort of documents that we started hacking on was this, and by the way, Angie, if you want to share a link to this, I'm going to share it with you, because this is available to everybody. This design framework, and in it, it's just a Google Doc. It's available to everyone. You can start to see, like, all right, well, here's what we're going to call things. This is their relationship to one another. Here are sort of the design elements. The header is going to work this way. We're going to put saved searches, which again we'll talk about in a minute. We're going to put those here and make this available to people all the time, and then maybe make these settings not available to people all the time and tuck them away in the menu. All of these kind of decisions started to get laid out in a design framework. So we weren't really into the graphics yet, or certainly not any code, and we're just sort of working out how all of these disparate needs are gonna fit together. And so I won't go through the entire document. It's pretty long, and there was a lot to think about. But if you're curious about sort of how we got that thinking down on paper, this is the place. And so out of that, Sophie's created this amazing visual design system and figured out how to fit all of these various features together. And I'll just hit on a few of them, and then I think Sophie can get into the nuts and bolts of them. But because, as I said, being agnostic to data and people wanting to be able to come in and just see what matters to them was a super important insight for version 3. Filters have always been a thing. You could always filter by categories in version 2, but we've definitely injected them with steroids for version 3. And then part of that injection is the ability to save them. So if you get the data whittled down to a view that is really insightful to you and that you might actually want to share with somebody, you can save that search, give it a name, and then it has a URL, and then you can pass that URL on to anybody, so that when they come to this deployment, they will see only that data. They don't have to go and check all the boxes that you checked. Similarly, we have collections, which is basically the manual process of that. It would be like going around taking all the songs, or in our case, posts, and dragging them into a folder. That's also something you can name that will have a link and that you can share with people. So those are 2 really important additions to version 3, I think, is giving people control of what they see. And that's, by the way, those people are anybody who comes to the site. It's not just administrators. Like, anybody can do this. There's also more views, and because, as I said, it's agnostic to how people want to view the data, the default view for a deployment can be map. It can also be list. It can also be a timeline, chart, or it can be a bar chart. And so all of those are freely available, and actually the admin can configure one to be the default at any given time. So these are also some more important but really basic things that we're doing in version 3. So that having been said, I'll take my screen off and let Sophie talk a little bit about how we really solve the specifics of those problems with saved searches, collections, and other stuff.
All right, just before Sophie jumps in, just a few housekeeping rules. If you're watching and you have any questions for us, You can post those on the event page itself, or you can jump in and post your questions on HipChat, IRC, or GitHub. Posting on any one of those three will show up on all of them. Michelle and I will be curating these and posting these to the team towards the end of the call once we're done with the presentation. Okay, I'm done interrupting you, Sophie. Go on.
Angie. No. So Brandon started touching on kind of why we made certain changes, and then I'm just going to kind of go through the actual designs and show exactly how those played out. So share my screen. Can you see that?
Yeah.
All right, so this is from the pattern library layouts, and Seth is going to talk a bit more about what the pattern library is, why we did it, and how that has helped our process. But for now, this would be a home page if you decided to make your default home page as a list. And all of our designs we've done responsive. So what this means is that no matter what screen size you're viewing the designs on, it's going to adjust accurately to display the right amount of content for that screen size. So it doesn't mean that there's like a separate mobile site and a separate iPad site and then a site for a large screen. It's all the same thing. It's the same exact content on every page. The URLs are always the same, but the way you're receiving that content is laid out differently. So this, as you're seeing it now, is on a fairly large screen. As we bring it down, so this would be if you're on like a phone, we're trying to just deliver the very basics. So things that are the most important, like adding a post, you're able to switch the views, but since we don't have a whole lot of screen real estate, we're switching it into this little drop down. Same thing with filter and search. Everything is still here, but you can access it on a phone. So I think this is one of the really huge improvements on V3 versus V2 is just that you can access this stuff anywhere you're going and on no matter what type of device. Some things may be collapsed into little option menus and then the navigation is off to the side, but everything is still here. Another big change with this layout, and I think Brandon touched on this a little bit, is that we don't have a specific dashboard for managing posts. This is all done within the deployment itself. So if you're an admin and you have the ability to delete posts or edit posts, you can do that right from the home page. So you can click edit, you can add it to a collection, and if you add it to a collection, it'll either get added or you can create a new collection that post now lives in, which will then get listed on the side here. Or you can do bulk editing and click on selecting full posts if you wanted to delete them or if you wanted to verify a bunch of posts at once. So this, I think, creates a really nice interaction with the content itself. You're not seeing it in multiple places. You can take action on posts wherever you're seeing them. So this is the list view. Brandon talked about this, which is a saved search. Anytime you save a search, which is basically it can be with filters, it can be with keywords, locations, dates, you can then save the search and it'll show up in the sidebar so that you can share them with other people. You can always refer back to them. If you're looking at specific types of data, it'll get updated automatically based on the parameters that you're adding to it. You can always edit these, turn certain filters on and off, and see how the data below reacts. And this, I think, just adds a whole nother level of usefulness on a deployment. Within the saved searches, you can change the custom views. So if your general default view on the home page is a list of posts, but you have a saved search that's very specific to how posts are related geographically, you can then change the default view on this post to be map. So there's a lot more customization that you can have with these. Or you can get notifications if things are added to this. If anything needs action taken, you can have them specifically for the saved searches. And again, this is all fully responsive, same as before. So if you're seeing this on a smaller screen, you can still see all of the filters, turn them on and off, save searches. Really, you're never going to be limited based on how you're viewing the content. Another great aspect of the site that I really like is the activity page. So this was partially as when we were replacing the workspace and the dashboard, we wanted to have a place where you could get an overview of every post. So on the home page, if you're seeing a list, it may not be the easiest to understand exactly what's going on. But since we have so many great data visualizations, we're able to make this kind of activity dashboard that shows exactly what's going on. So at some point in the future, this will be customizable, so you'll be able to choose what exactly you want to see on the activity page. But generally, you'll be able to see what posts are trending, what people are talking about, just get a very general overview, and you'll be able to filter based on what you want to see. So if you want to see just what's really popular today, or what's been popular in the last week, or at all time. So I think all time will be really useful to see. For certain events, you may see a lot of post activity and then it may die down a little bit. And you'll be able to see all of this on this page. Then we also have a timeline. So if you're an admin and you want to just get a quick overview of how often things are being posted, if anything's new and needs review or comments, you can view it as a timeline here. And this will have its own page too, so that it can be seen as a whole. And similarly with everything else, like on all the other pages, you'll have filters. So if you want to look at the timeline, but say you only want to see everyone that's written a comment, you'll be able to filter and just make these all the comments that have been written. And then I think another thing that's new, which I think in the last couple of Hangouts people have shown, is just these custom post structures. So people are able to have different steps within their post, different fields, and this just, I think, adds a whole level of functionality for the admin to really customize what posts are, what information we're getting, and what data we're getting. And again, similarly, all of these pages are fully responsive, so this goes down onto a small screen and can anything that was not shown is hidden away but can easily be accessed. And I'm going to hand it over to Seth because the way we built all of these patterns that come together to make the pages is with our pattern library, and he's going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks. Well, first I want to say this is very exciting to be able to have this pattern library and this code base the way it exists now and how it's integrated into the platform software. It's excellent. It's amazing because I've been working on this since like day one of Ushahidi, so for about 2.5 years, and it's gone through probably 4 iterations, something like that. And once the design framework came into play, and once that was created, it totally streamlined our workflow. So through the design framework and then the mock-ups, it came into the front end, and that's when we built the pattern library. And so I'm sure Angie's going to post a link to the pattern library. I will share my screen here. 1 second. Let's see here. Okay. So we built this. Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Good. Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
So we built the pattern library to provide a universal central place for anybody to see the code, the UI components, and the page layouts. If you go to the URL and you click around, you'll see that pattern library kind of starts with your small elements. And we call them those basics, just your basic colors, typography, form elements, icons, stuff like that. And it builds on itself into fragments, which are smaller pieces put together to equal another component, and then it builds to modules, and then it builds to blocks, and then finally it goes over and compiles to layouts. And so Sophie showed you some of those, but go to this URL and just look around the pattern library. You'll see all our working, functioning, fully styled components, and you'll see most, if not all, the layouts within the application. So, so this is a way for for anyone who wants to. Oh, also I want to recommend mention that in the pattern library we have right to left redirection built in. So anytime you're in the pattern library and anytime you're looking at a module, you can click this redirection arrow, and it will totally flip the redirection. And that way, when you install your deployment and you are with a right to left language, there should be a setting to where it'll activate the correct style sheet that'll render and show all these elements right to left. So it was very important for us to build that into the pattern library, so different people speaking different languages could see how the elements are laid out and the layouts are laid out. So
supporting right to left languages is really easy, though, right, Seth?
Yes. Maybe. No. No, that was pretty tough, but I got to give props to this guy right here, or James L101. I ended up finding, we're open source, so I wanted to use as much open source as possible, and I found this excellent right to left mix-in library that made it very easy, actually, and so I that's in the pattern library, and that's what we use to be able to render right to left and left to right in the same code base without having to write two different style sheets. So props to James L1001 for that. So anyway, yeah, if you want to run your deployment with default styles, you don't have to do anything. You just deploy the platform and the styles are there. But if you want to customize your deployment, you're able to do that and go to the GitHub repo and clone the pattern library repo. You get it running locally. Then you customize and you style accordingly, and you test all your styles locally, and then you will have those styles compiled. They'll be compiled into a CSS folder, and then you just take that CSS folder and you drag it over to your deployment, and your custom styles will then be in your deployment. And so, and like I said, there should be a setting. I believe there's a setting, or there will be, or there should be a left to right setting to where if you're speaking the left to right language, you click that into your deployment, and it will render and it will serve the RTL sheets as opposed to the LTR sheets. So. So yeah, that's basics of how you would customize and test and customize your styles for your deployment. Another thing that's very important is if you'll notice on the pattern library, there's a section on the front page. It's called front-end guidelines. If you click into there, you'll see there's all of our thinking behind all of our code in the pattern library. How to, everything from how to install and set up, how to add packages, if you want to add some packages that we're not using, how the structure is set up, how the directory is set up. Here, and this is just what I was talking about, how to apply to the platform. Very simple instructions on how to get that into your deployment. And then we deep dive into specifics of code, how we format our code, and how we structure our grid and our breakpoints and our variables and mixins and icons. Now, if you're doing this for your deployment, those guidelines may not be as important because it's your code, you're doing whatever you want to with it. This was developed more for people who want to submit pull requests to the open source software. So yeah, that's just a basic rundown of the pattern library and why we created it, and how you use it to customize your deployment.
This is all super, super, super awesome, guys. This is, you've blown my mind. So for everybody else who's joining in, I think we have about maybe 15 more minutes. So we're going to open up the floor to questions. And I'll actually start off with the first one, right? You've made a lot of interesting changes, and I think it's really geared towards also making it a lot easier for deployers to make those changes by themselves, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how easy would it be for someone who doesn't have that much design skill to customize the deployment?
I can answer
5,
that.
maybe?
Yeah, it depends on how customized you want it. So right now we have the ability to replace the header image. So you could certainly put something custom there. In the somewhat near future, we're hoping to build into the settings the ability to change colors and stuff, possibly even change fonts. So once that's done, I would rate those both as 1s on the, if you're not super technical, it'll be really easy to change. In terms of updating the pattern library, I think if you have some front-end development experience, it's not hard at all. It's written pretty cleanly, and it would just be a matter of changing some variables in the global file. If you wanted to get super duper custom, it would be a little harder, but everything's set up and clean and ready to go. It really just depends on how comfortable you feel.
Yeah. So it's set up for different experience levels.
Super awesome. And just to clarify, from what I heard, you're saying that if anybody has any front-end development experience and wants to make updates to the pattern library, they can actually do that?
They can make updates to the pattern library, or they can clone the pattern library. The pattern library is basically a theme that's being applied to the, it's like a makeup that we're putting on our website. So you could update that and make it into your own theme. And since it is open source, you could share that with people.
Yeah, that's something we're working on. We're working on a way to have users in our community create themes and submit those themes. And then as a deployer, you can go through, you can use default styles, use your custom styles, or go through a directory of themes that people have created to then pick and use that.
Super awesome. So it's pretty much kind of the same stuff we used to do for V2, but just made a lot easier, you know, with the theming. I like calling it makeup now, so I'll stop calling it calling the makeup. All right. We had one question from Francesco that I know Sophie had answered, but for the sake of the guys who are watching and may not necessarily be on HipChat, I'll just ask it again, and then you can frame the answer again for them. He wanted to know if a task list on the latest report to be approved is no longer available.
Yeah, so this I mean, I'm going to zoom out a little bit in answering this, because there was a lot of ideas that deployers had about, like, or maybe not, I won't even say ideas, but this is exactly how I would like V3 to work for my specific team. And sometimes they were really complex, like being able to take a post and assign it to somebody, like, say, a GitHub issue. Some people wanted, things to be forwarded and redirected, and so to avoid making the platform way too complex and having a lot of features to navigate, but also B, to have maybe one feature that gets 80% of the way there for all of those concerns. I think between the combination of saved searches, which is what Sophie talked about in the chat there, where you can whittle down and actually have this dynamic place that is always gathering posts to meet a certain criteria, and user roles, where you can maybe are in a group, and let's go with this scenario of posts that need to be translated. So if a post comes into a deployment and it's your job to translate it every time, part of setting up a custom post, or excuse me, part of setting up a post for the public to submit to can include adding a step. So in addition to what the sort of public submitter writes, they pass that in, and then this post is not yet complete because there's another step that the folks who manage the deployment must complete, called, in this case, translation. So with saved searches, we can say, all right, take all the posts that have not yet completed translation, put them over here, and I'm going to take this user group and make it so that they always see that saved search. You effectively have, to the best of our ability, a place where somebody who is in the user role of translator can log into the deployment. They have a link they push, and they see all the posts in the order in which they were submitted that are waiting for them to translate. So that's really, at a high level, our solution for exactly that. It may not be perfect for exactly how your team wants to manage tasks, but it's the way I think we've covered most use cases from the folks that we interviewed. And do let me know if that doesn't answer your question. I can clarify something.
No, I think it does. I actually think it does. And that brings me to one. You talked about interviewing people. So what does a feedback process look like for the design team, and how do you get to incorporate feedback from the users and have that incorporate into the design and then translate into the live platform? What does that process look like for the team?
Well, man, I'm super hungry for September 30th, where the pool of folks who can actually get in there and have an opinion about what works and what doesn't for them is going to be quite a bit larger. So far, we've had to initiate that a little bit. So we're in the middle of a second round of user testing. We've done a first one, and so what that looked like in the nuts and bolts of that was, folks at Ushahidi had a very formal testing setup. Had people come in, guided through a process. Let's complete these tasks. Everything was documented along the way, and there was sort of a summation from the folks who were moderating the test of what they discovered, and maybe some recommendations. Not recommendations as to how to fix the problem, but what were the problems that they had that we should really focus on solving. And so, I mean, even already today, what we've shared with you today is very much a very real result of that. For example, saved searches used to be called sets and smart sets. We had even more. We had, like, I think workspace was a top-level menu item, and activity was another one. And so we've consolidated and improved language and changed the layout, brought things out that were previously hidden, all as a result of that test. And so we're doing another one of those now, and I think it'll be on a much grander scale here after September 30th, where we'll be getting it, I think, maybe in a less formal atmosphere, obviously. I think we'll be getting it through email and GitHub issues, but all of it kind of gets, we have folks on our team who are able to sort of summarize that and distill for Sophie and Seth and myself, here are the problems that we hear are most, to the loudest, and that you should really put your attention on solving. So I'm actually really excited to do that, because we've been mostly just browser bug testing and not fixing people's problems. So for the last few weeks, I'm eager to get back into that mode.
Awesome. So you guys heard it. Please do continue to share your feedback with us via GitHub issues, so that the amazing design team can get to those as soon as they can, in an informal way, and make you some very nice makeup for your platform. All right. I have one other question, but I think this would probably be directed at Jess. You guys talked a lot about having the RTL, the left to right stuff, or is it right to left? Having that incorporated into the design, because it's really important, especially for Arabic-speaking deployers, and just making sure that they're able to interact with the platform in the way that they normally do. Do we have that implemented on the platform just yet?
It is going to be implemented in our next release on September 30th.
Yay! Okay. On to the same one. How about the activity monitor, which looked so awesome?
Also, September 30th. So big stuff being incorporated in this next release.
Seems like a lot is happening on September 30th. It's weird.
Yeah, the world will come to an end on September 30th. All right. I think we had one more question from Francesco. Okay, his initial question, which I think we needed some clarification on, was based on, let me just go back. In terms of the UI customization, is a concept of the theme in version 2 easier? But he just clarified and asked whether there's a capability for administrators to switch between themes. So kind of like the way we had it in V2 before was, you'd have different themes, added onto your deployment, and then it would just be a matter about selecting it as a setting and selecting the one that you like best. This would be Francesco. Yes.
Well, today and on September 30th, in settings, there is not a control for browsing a gallery of themes, and there's not a control for even adding a theme. So what Seth described earlier is the solution on September 30th. We have a sandbox called the Pattern Library. It's actually a great sort of setup and user experience for actually seeing the implications of the color changes, the font changes, even if you want to go way more significant than that. Any change you can make, you can see how it's going to affect your platform, or excuse me, how it's going to affect your deployment before you ever actually change your deployment. And then once you feel good about it, you just drag the style sheet and you're good. So that's a very developer-oriented solution, and that's what we have ready for September 30th for really detailed kind of color and font and whatever changes. But that being said, I think that is very much a foreshadowing to how we see themes going. So it actually be pretty trivial, I think, in the near future, and by near future, I think 2 to 3 months, to add a control that does select an extra style sheet that you brought over. So I think that's sort of phase 2, is to be able to have a thing in the UI to just point to another style sheet that somebody created the way we just described. I think phase 3 is actually having a service that Ushahidi can provide for providing a library for people to submit their themes that they've created from the Pattern Library into, and they have access to it. Every deployment would have access to it and can select them. So it's kind of a phased approach. I think right now it's very like, if you're a developer and you know how to drag, edit a style sheet and drag a file, you're good to go. If you need a little bit more help, I think that's coming in the near future. And then this sort of ideal, here's this library of things that you can sample and see pictures of, is a little bit more far off, but certainly within the next 6 months would be my estimate. Jess, did I just scare you?
You always scare me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I think that's definitely where we're headed with that.
I like making commitments on Jess's behalf.
That's great. Great.
Yeah. Especially
live hangouts. Yeah.
Let's throw it into September 30th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh my gosh. All right, I have one more question. If you're watching and have any questions, now would be the time to post them. I know we've talked about a lot of things that are kind of working, or in progress or coming soon. If you were just to summarize within, what can people expect after September 30th from the design team? Like, what's the interesting thing that you guys are working on right now?
I think it'll be, as Brandon said, just getting it out in the world. I really hope that we'll get a lot of feedback from users, and that there will be a bit of an adjustment period where we're trying to iterate and make things better based on what we hear back from people. We've done the best job we can do, but I think there's always like a smoothing out and recovery period after that to make little improvements. And I think there are some behind-the-scenes things that we've been talking about wanting to improve. Small screens, certain styles, everything is functional and good to go, but we just want to make it a little better. So I would say immediately after release, it's going to be a lot of small tweaks, polish, listening to users.
Okie dokes. Okay, I lied. That wasn't my last question. I'm going to try and put on my designer hat, even though I can't design to save my life, because you guys are too awesome and you do all of that already. So we talked about the pattern library being something that guys can, jump in, customize, and, just play around with and make something really cool out of it. We didn't quite cover, for a designer, somebody who's coming in for the first time, what would it take to, set it up and customize it? And maybe you don't have to answer this in full right now, considering the amount of time that we have. You could probably schedule some time to go through a deeper dive, but just give a bit of an overview of what to expect as someone who's jumping in for the first time to set it up and start customizing.
Yeah. Well, the first important thing to mention is the GitHub repo README should have all the directions in there to get you started. And that, I'm just going to leave it at that. We put a lot of time into creating that README and going through and making sure it works. If anybody is trying to clone it locally and get up and running with that, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll help you get it up and running, and we'll answer any questions you have. So yeah, just follow the README, and once you get it up and running, then I would suggest looking at the directory and how the site is structured. Look at the front-end guidelines. Ask us anything. We'll help you get started, and hopefully you could do what we talked about, whether you can do a small changes or you can deep dive, depending on your experience.
Okay, and the best place. Go ahead, Brandon.
I just wanted to kind of underscore. I was talking at the very top of this this chat about some of the kind of underlying principles we applied when we first started to even dive into what the heck this would look like. And one of them, and I think Sophie did a great job with this. She came in and did all the visual design. Was like, let's be conscious of the conversation we're having right now, where folks are really concerned about how they're going to make it look their own. And themes were a very big thing in version 2, because depending on the theme you were in, even the default one was very, like, it had strong opinion about color, and there was like a strong look and feel. And so with version 3, I think it's very intentionally out of the box, very out of the way from a look and feel standpoint. I mean, there's blue, there's yellow, there's a few button colors, but generally speaking, like, it's very neutral. So for the most basic user coming in, something like changing the header, giving it a background image, adding descriptions, things like that, like, actually go a long way, because there's not a lot of color around it that it has to compete with. A background header image is actually going to have a very big impact, and it's something you could do without even knowing what CSS stands for. So just generally, that was kind of our approach, and I think that also helps with theming going forward, is you don't have to change 100 different lines of code to change the look and feel of it. If you're familiar with Sash, you can actually change the primary color from blue to red, and the entire thing will look different. So.
Okie dokes, awesome. Where would be the best place that guys who have questions or just want to get to know more about the pattern library reach you on? Which channels are you guys mostly on?
Well, we're in the one I think everybody's in now, the platform v3 one. Angie, if the folks don't already have the link, you know.
Yeah.
I'm in there. Other than that, I think, you know, like, the GitHub issues is a place, I think, where, like, we all live, especially today, trying to address bugs and feature requests and things like that. So those are the first that come to my mind.
If you put something in GitHub too, you can specifically either tag one of us or add a UI tag onto it, just to ensure that the design team itself looks at it.
All right, guys. I think we have just about 3 minutes left, since we don't have any room for any more questions. But that doesn't mean that you don't have room or space to. Feel free to keep posting your questions. You know, keep the conversations going on HipChat, the Platform V3 room, GitHub IRC. Remember that posting on any one of those three will show up on all of them, and we'll have any one of the team members who are here right now, or those other ones who are not with us, available to answer your questions. Remember, your feedback really does go a long way and is extremely helpful to us. Keep playing around with the platform. If you see anything that you would like improved, or you have any recommendations, feel free to share that with us via our GitHub issues page. I'm going to post in a link to the GitHub issues page for the pattern library specifically as well. If you're a designer, please jump in and do try. This is a really good or a great opportunity for you to start getting involved in the open source space. Play around with it. You know, share any, I don't know, any of your recommendations, or send in any pull requests, and we'll be happy to do that. And remember, September 30th, www.ushahidi.com. You need to sign up. Something really, 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 really big is coming. And, you know, just keep sharing your contributions with us, translations. Yeah. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Seth, Sophie, Brandon. You guys are amazing. I hope that we can schedule another hangout soon with you guys. Maybe you could give us a walkthrough of how to use the pattern library, and I can finally learn how to design and be awesome like you. But yeah, thank you guys, and thank you for everyone else who was watching. See you guys next week. Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks for organizing, Angie.
No worries.
Bye. Thanks.